gamers, Kerlik here for Daphat.com with the third video on how to lead a raid. In this video we are going to discuss keeping it cool in your raid group along with how to motivate your raiders and keep them coming back. The first section, let's discuss keeping it cool. There's nothing I personally hate more than when you raid and you take your good old time and people are bullshitting and aren't getting pulls in. It's very important that you keep the tempo. Once you start pulling trash, keep the raid going. Don't stop. Get to the boss as quickly as possible. Most people are there to kill bosses and get their gear. They're not there to sit down and bullshit and be social. We have plenty of time outside of raiding to do that. After you get to the boss, it may be the first time you're looking at this particular encounter. It's important that during every pull, you stay positive. The minute the raid leader gets negative and starts talking nasty or is upset, the rest of the raid group's tempo will follow. It's not easy killing bosses. It may take multiple pulls and multiple attempts for all 20, 30, or 40 of your raiders to figure out what's going on. It's very, very important as raid lead, you're the one that sets the attitude of the raid group. Now, I'm not going to sit back and tell you that I've never had a moment where I was just completely frustrated and irritated, and I let it come out in front of the raid group. That happens to everybody. It's important that when you recognize the situation is occurring, you take a deep breath, call a 5-minute break for the bathroom, get a drink, and come back refreshed and focused and ready to get shit done. This leads me into the next section of keeping things cool. Wipes are going to happen. People are going to mess up. It happens a lot. You cannot get frustrated when someone makes a mistake. You can, however, get frustrated when someone makes a mistake over and over again, especially the same mistake. It's very important that when people are making mistakes, you do not bring them in front of the group and make an obstacle of them. If they're unable to fix the mechanic or fix the mistake that they're making, it's important that you sit them out. If you don't sit them out, the other 19 raiders will get upset and will get frustrated, and that can completely destroy that night's raiding. There comes a time in every raid group where you just need what I call face time on a boss. It's not that your raiders are bad or are making the same mistake over and over again. It's that there are so many mechanics involved in some fights that you just need to practice and continually try until you get it right. You will find that after you've practiced it long enough, it will become second nature, and everybody in your group will be able to blow through that boss, and you'll sit back and think, wow, that used to give us so much trouble. And it kind of becomes funny. It actually becomes a joke within the group. If you take anything away from this particular portion, it's that you need face time. It's going to happen. We use that term a lot in my raid group. We use it a lot on a very hard encounter in the current instance we were raiding, and it took us roughly a month and a half to actually down that boss, but it just required the time put in and the raiders to pay attention and show up and do the job at hand. It's important as a raid leader you also recognize and can tell when your group just is not ready for current content. There are metrics required to beat certain bosses in a game. Sometimes they require a certain amount of damage. Sometimes the tank requires a certain amount of mitigation. There are a lot of different factors that make up raiding and raid groups. And sometimes you just aren't going to have the group ready for it, and you need to go back and take some time and farm some additional gear, or push to get your character up to the next step before going back in and trying that encounter again. Going in with a group that is not ready, or bringing in new members that are just not prepared for the current content, is only going to frustrate your entire group. You're going to basically be trying to force a boss down that has particular metrics that are required that you're just not bringing to the battle. This will completely frustrate your seasoned raiders. They will not want to put up with this. They put a lot of time and effort into their characters. They put a lot of time into learning how to play their character properly. And when you bring someone in that is not ready for the encounter, the entire raid group will get frustrated. So it's best at that point in time to just call the raid at night, find some people that are ready for the encounter, or go back and work on those people and get them ready for that encounter. So that basically covers my keeping it cool section. In the next section, we're going to talk about motivation. It's very important that you're able to motivate your raiders and keep them coming back night after night and banging their head on a boss. It's important that at the end of the night, you recap the encounter and what happened that night. You discuss the fight, you discuss things in areas in which you messed up, and you try to walk away in a positive note. I was once part of a raid group that I was running on the weekends outside of guild, and at the end of the night, when we were stuck on a boss, the raid leader would just log off frustrated. It made me not want to come back. I felt like I was doing something wrong. If you have a group of solid raiders, they will want to sit down, look at the parses, maybe look at the fraps, see what they're doing wrong and what they can do to fix it. As a raid leader, it's important that you want to do this with your raiders. It shows that not only are you willing to put in the time and effort, but you're ready to come back tomorrow and give it another shot. The next portion of motivation is leading by example. I touched a little bit on this in an earlier video, but it's very important that if you expect your raiders to go out and do something for the raid group, whether it be farming materials, alternate advancement levels, farming for currency to buy a new piece of gear, you must be willing to do the same work that you're asking them to do. Not only that, but it's probably a good idea to do it with them. It brings the group together, you guys can have some laughs, and do something outside of the seriousness of actually raiding in a game. The final topic on motivation is know when to call it quits. There's nothing that breaks up raid groups more than attitudes. And believe it or not, a lot of times, things are going to get frustrating. You're going to be fighting a boss for multiple nights, you're going to be in there 4 or 5 nights a week raiding, and it's a good idea that you recognize when your raiders are just burnt out and call a night off. Maybe you don't raid on Monday and you come back on Tuesday. Maybe you take off Tuesday and Wednesday and you come back Thursday. When you have raiders that are burnt out, they're not going to want to show up. And if they don't want to show up, they're going to leave the rest of the group hanging because you depend on that particular person to show up and do their job and do it well. So it's important that you recognize when people are getting burnt out and take a night off. Thank you for watching the 3rd episode in How to Raid Lead. In the next episode, I'm going to discuss time spent versus reward and recruitment processes that I use. Have a good night.